Okay, here we go. So thinking about the box, we're going to start with the box. And for the box, you need a design first, and then you need a paper template. It's real important that you tape the paper together to make sure it's going to fit. And actually go ahead and kind of gently tape it and fold it once you've cut all the pieces, because if it fits together with paper, it will fit together with clay, right? So this is me just checking to make sure everything fits. It's going to be the right distance. I've got it all labeled. Each side is labeled. The tape's coming apart, and that's okay. Also, it's important to use the same sides just in case something's a little off. So I've actually written on the same sides, and those are going to be my outsides once I get to clay. And that is important because if you turn it over, sometimes things get a little reversed. And so I would stick with the same side if you can. One of the things that happened this morning, and I've made a bunch of boxes before, is I cut what I thought would be the correct top, and it didn't fit. It fit this way, but you can see it's a little bit shorter, so that when I closed it, it didn't fit the sides. So it was too short over here on the sides. But I noticed it with paper, and I made a new one, and that worked out fine. But if you notice it with clay, it's harder to fix. If you notice it with paper, it's really easy to fix. So this is my paper template. It's just going to be kind of an ordinary box. And then the design is where I'm going to make it interesting. And the design will be carved in or added on clay. So I went ahead and made slabs and covered them up. And I wanted to show you thickness. So pinky thickness is about like 2 magazines or 2 paint sticks, right? Almost 2. But if you just have one of the 5-gallon sticks, that works. If you have magazines, you could stack up even 2 magazines to make it thicker if they're too thin, to make your cuts. And when you make your cuts on your slab, I went ahead and sliced the edge off this one so you could see it. So this is just a little under pinky thickness, and as a result, I'm going to have to protect it. I also made this little extra slab to show you what not to do. So one of the things that's really a problem when people do this is when you're making a box, if you handle the slabs and you're like carrying them around like this and they get bent, then sometimes, in fact often, clay has a memory and it will remember that bend. And so later, as it's drying, even after you've attached it to sidewalls and you think there's no chance of it like moving, it will move and warp and remember that and go back to that, and then the side of your box would come apart. So it's really important that you don't handle them like this. And I'm not going to use this one because I wanted to show you what not to do with it. So when you do pick up a slab, you're going to pick it up from corners and hold it straight. You're going to lay it down carefully and hold it straight, right? If you needed to pick up shortwise, I would go like this and then lift up to make sure you're able to have that slab not get bent. So that's super important. I'm going to set this aside just a scrap, and I might re-wedge it, or I might use it for something small where I can cut it up where the bend won't matter. So I went ahead and made my slabs and covered them up. This is the task for today. And typically, if I have a task on the agenda, it is for that day. And the expectation is you'll finish it that day, unless it says day 1 of 3, day 1 of 2, day 1 of whatever, day 2 of 2. So the box is going to take several days, and you're going to have to monitor the drying. So once I've got this paper, and I'm sure it fits together really well, I'm going to go ahead and take off the tape. And I'm going to measure and make sure I have enough slabs. And I know you have small clay boards, so you might have to stack these. So I would make one and carefully set it off, and then make one and carefully set it off. And then you can stack them to let them dry. It's fine for the 2 sides to be pushed up against each other. That's not a problem. But you do want a finger width around each one, and this does not have it. So let me turn my board around because I think I had it turned this way earlier. Yeah. Okay. So I can do side 1 and side 2 here. Make sure I have enough clay, and you at least minimum want a finger on each side, right? So now I know I have enough clay, right? There's enough clay. And I could go ahead and draw a line on these on the slabs, but I don't want to make the cut yet because the slab's going to dry, and as it dries, it's going to shrink. So if we cut these, the outside edge is going to be drier by the time we get ready to assemble it. So we don't want to cut them today. So I'm just going to draw a line, just really light, and I'm going to label it. And it doesn't have to be perfect because, again, I'm not cutting yet. It's really light. And let's put one in the middle just so I'll know this is 2. And I'm going to label this side 1 and side 2 so that later I know that's what went there. And you can make different weird shapes boxes because, no one says they have to be a rectangle, but it's going to get more difficult as we go. So I know I need 2 more of these. I've got my 2 more sides over here. Let me see if I can go back and get at them. So I want you to measure. Whoops. Okay, make sure I'm getting lined back up. Okay, so I want you to measure from the exact paper. So I know these sides are the same, right? Side 1, 2, 3, 4 are all the same. But I want to measure off that same paper just in case something's a little bit different. I know it'll fit together later. And I want to make sure I have some slab left over on the outside edge of it. So that could move up some. At least like a pinky thickness. At least a pinky thickness around each paper. And this is going to just remind me which one's where and how I'm going to use them. But I'm not cutting. I'm just gently drawing a line. And these lines can be erased if something goes wrong or if there's something that you need to change. If you figure out something needs to go differently or you have a different idea, you want to switch things up, you can keep your slabs. So I've got both sides. So I'm going to go ahead and label that 3 and 4. And then I'm going to trace the top and bottom over on these slabs. And then once I've got them all traced, I'm going to wrap them up. So I want to wrap them up in such a way that they'll dry a little bit. So I don't want the plastic super tight. I need them to dry just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is put a sheet of paper in between or a paper towel or something. Okay, so let's back up. There's no reason to cover the whole entire board with plastic when what you really need covered is the clay. So I'm going to put down some plastic. Now keep in mind, I need these to dry out and be leather hard by Monday. And I'm not going to be here to monitor mine. So I need them to not get too dry. And I'll come in Monday morning early and check and see if they need to dry out some more. So to keep them from sticking together, I'm going to put some paper in between. Working to hold the slabs straight as I can, stack them as evenly as I can. I made some extra slabs for the flange. And I sliced these slabs and then they were not quite big enough. So I actually put the guide beside it on the flat surface and then rolled it to make it a little bit, stretch it a little bit to make sure I had enough. If you don't have enough clay, you have a couple options. You can make a bigger slab or you can make your box smaller. And if you make your box smaller, then it would fit on those slabs. Okay, I need to draw on, almost forgot. I need to draw on the top and bottom just to make sure. And then I made a little bit of extra because you always wind up needing a little extra for something. It just kind of never fails. So, and I can recycle it. Clay can be recycled as long as it's not fired. So you can put it in a bucket with water, and then it will go back to slip, and then you can dry it out, and then you can wedge it up and put it back in your bag. It's a process. So this is my top, this is my bottom, and those are just really light. Like I can just wipe and get rid of all of those lines. So it's super light, just barely pressed in. So now I'm going to put some more paper just to keep them from sticking together. This is an extra slab I made. I'll lay that on carefully on top. Now, if they're stacking on top, they need to stack pretty evenly and not hang off, because again, if this hangs off the edge and bends down, it's probably not going to be very usable later. It's going to dry and warp, and remember that. So they need to be stacked gently and carefully and keep them flat. Can't tell you how important it is to keep them flat. So now I'm going to wrap this in, keep it wet because I'm going to be gone for the weekend. So I want it to stay really wet. You are going to want yours to dry out and stiffen up. What is Leatherhard? Leatherhard is where you can't bend it like this. When you pick it up, it would just hold itself straight. So that's where you're trying to get yours by Monday. So you might have to monitor your drying over the weekend. I will monitor mine later this evening probably, and then Monday morning is when I'll really check it. Try to get it moving. So this is all wrapped up and ready to go. So anytime you're closing up your clay and you want to keep it wet, you want all the air out. Anytime you're trying to let it dry, you could leave some air poofed in there. So instead of wrapping it so tight, I might just go like this over it and leave some air in there to help it dry. So for example, let's say you're worried you'll forget about it, and you want it to dry out some, but not entirely. So you might make a little tent with some air in it, and that would help it dry slowly, but not completely to where you have to start over. Because too dry too soon is failure and doom, and you have to start over then. Okay, so I'm going to move that aside. Okay, and I think that's about it for boxes. Clay bags, sit them on the twist. So anytime you close up your clay bag, make sure you get all the air out, twist it and sit it on the twist. Don't try to use a twist tie or rubber band or something. Those just don't work. Just twist it really tight and sit it on the twist. We're making one of each. I'm looking through my notes. You're making one of each. The notes in blue, on your agenda in blue, are for second years. So every time you see notes in blue, it's for second years. So if you've used some clay, let's talk about wedging. You've used up your clay and it's gotten all messed up, you need to wedge it before you can reuse it. So this is wedging, and this is a one-handed spiral because this is so small. So I'm actually turning it on a point and spiraling it around. Now I'm not squishing the clay, I'm not flattening it. If you have a little bit bigger piece of clay, you can actually do what's called a ram's head wedge. And you want your arms low to the table and pushing forward. Right. And it makes a ram's head. So squeeze in each time, push forward. And I know I'm shaking all the camera. My stand for it is not very sturdy. So this is a spiral wedge. Again, because it's a smaller piece, spiral wedge works well. So there's a spiral. If you're throwing, you're going to take this spiral and then pat it into a ball. If you're hand building, from here you can flatten it into a slab or whatever you need to do. On the ram's head, you pick up the sides, push it in. I don't have any leverage to push against. Let me come over here. There. It helps when things aren't scooting. Okay, so this is a ram's head. Notice it's not flat. If you're flattening things, you're adding air, and that's not good. So I'm just pushing forward just a little bit, and it makes a little nose and then some spirals for the horns. And then when you get ready to use it, you just flatten the nose down and it's ready to go. Okay, so that is wedging and box preparations.